Hi guys! Today we are back with another crochet tutorial, and in today's tutorial we're going to learn this stitch right here. This is called the Tunisian stitch. So it looks kind of knitted because it kind of is worked like a knitted stitch. It's very different from any of the stitches we've done in previous tutorials, which are again all linked below. It works great for a blanket just because it's so dense. There's not a ton of space between each stitch. And it also works great for cleaning cleaning cloths, towels, that sort of thing, because on the reverse side, or the wrong side of the stitch, there's little bumps on each row. Not super huge, but they're really cute and they add a little scrubbiness. The front side though is beautiful. It's kind of like a, sort of like a straw basket or something like that. So that's what we're going to make today. To get started, I'm just going to take my crochet hook package out here. This was handmade by a maker, I believe in Hamilton, Ontario. I'll link them if I can find them. It was a gift from a friend of mine. But yeah, isn't it cool? It holds all my crochet hooks. So we're going to need a pair of scissors. We're also going to need a pretty big crochet hook. So I'm going to use a 5mm aluminum crochet hook. You could use it with any size. I just really prefer my aluminum ones, and I don't have anything bigger in the aluminum hooks. I'll just put my other things away. And we also need some yarn. Today I am using Bernat Crafter cotton yarn, and I'm using a variegated green one. I've linked that as well in the description below. So to get started, we are going to do a chain. A great thing about this stitch is it doesn't matter how many stitches. You don't have to count stitches for this one. It's it repeats one stitch at a time. So we're going to start with a slip knot. To make a slip knot, you make a loop, cross over your loop, holding your tail end, reach with your other hand in through the loop and grab that tail and pull it nice and tight. That is your slip stitch. And I like to leave a nice tail just in case I need to do any sewing in the end. In this one I'm not going to need to, but you never know. More yarn is better than less. So now that we've got our slip stitch, I'm going to do 30 just because I have been doing 30 stitches for each of my tutorials. So 1, and 30. Now that we've got our chain stitches, we're going to begin working the chain in the Tunisian stitch. There is no foundation first row or anything like that. You jump right into it. So for this stitch, we are working for our first row into the back loops on your chain. So you can see this is the back of your chain. That's the front of your chain. When you're looking at the front, it should look kind of like a braid or like a lot of little V's. See that little V? But if you flip it over to the back side, there's these little bumps on the back. And that's what we're working in to begin with. So first things first, we're going to skip that first chain, and we're going to work into the bump of that back bump of that second chain. So insert your hook, wrap the yarn around, and pull through. And this is where things are a little different than a regular crochet stitch. We're not doing anything else after that. The next step is to insert into the next back bump of the following chain, wrap around, pull through. Now we're going to have 3, and we're going to work all the way across that foundation chain, just grabbing those little back loops, wrapping around and pulling through. And you can see we're just adding new loops onto our hook until we have all loops from the entire chain all on the hook. So it'll feel a little bit like knitting after that because you're going to have a whole lot going on your hook, but it's a lot easier than knitting. For me anyway. Had a big conversation with a friend about this last week. She thinks knitting is easier and I think crochet is easier, but in this situation it kind of feels like knitting, so maybe I could do knitting. I just prefer crochet. Alright, so then you're inserting into that back loop, wrapping around and pulling through, but that's where you're stopping. There's no finishing of each stitch because we work in the entire row all at once. So now you can see it's kind of beginning to look like a first row of knit, which is sometimes why this is called the Tunisian knit stitch. But from what I found online, most people just call it the Tunisian stitch or the Afghan stitch. So based on that name, pretty easy to see. It's really good for Afghans and blankets. It just looks really great. I made my stitches a little bit tight. So here's a little bit more advice. On your first foundation chain, make your stitches a little bit loose just because you're working in the back loops, and the back loops are always a little bit more snug when you're working with getting your hook in there. So I'm just going to keep doing this all the way to the end of my chain. And so you can pause the video here, and when you get to the end of your chain, you can press play again. I'm just going to finish this and then I'll be right back. Okay, so we're on the last stitch of that first row. Just going to insert into that final foundation chain, wrap around and pull through. And now you can see we have all 30 stitches on the hook. So it really resembles your first row when you're knitting. Difference this time is we only need one hook. So on that last stitch you just did, we do need to chain one just on the one, just like that. So when you get to the end, you're going to insert into that chain, wrap around, pull through, and then you're going to wrap around and pull just through that first one, which acts as a chain one. So now that means that beginning of the next row has been started. Now what we're going to do is wrap around and pull through two all the way across. So wrap around, pull through two, 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 all the way to the end of the row. And you can see it's revealing that first row that we just did. This stitch can be a little bit difficult just because you're working with all of that yarn on your hook, but if you have one of those hooks that has like a long tail end to it, which is, I've seen them at Michael's, and I'll find one and I'll link it in the description, but there's crochet hooks that basically have an additional piece on the end for this sort of thing to be sitting on. That way if you're making like a really large blanket or something, you're not confined to the length of your hook. There we go, almost done. So you're wrapping around and pulling through two of the loops each time. Alright, so we are almost at the end. Wrap around, pull through two, all the way until you're at the end. There's our final two, wrap around, pull through. And now you can see we've got kind of a weird looking stitch started in the front here. So now it gets a little bit easier with each row because the spot where your hook is going in is pretty clear now. We're only going to be working into these vertical lines. So you can see there's a whole bunch of vertical lines, as many stitches as we've got, so there should be 30 of them. What we're going to do is get all these loops on the hook again. So we're going to insert right into that vertical line, wrap around, pull through, insert into the next one, wrap around, pull through, and go all the way across the entire project, wrap around, pull through just that one time. So we're not working a full stitch, we're just getting the stitch onto the hook. You can see it's building up. So these, oops, sorry about that, these are going to be our vertical stitches for the next row. So insert, wrap around, pull through, insert, wrap around, pull through, all the way to the end. It's actually a really easy stitch, it's just a little bit time consuming because you don't see the row work as quickly as, I don't know, maybe if you were double crocheting. If this stitch is looking really confusing and you're new to crochet, I do have an entire playlist on my channel of crochet basics for absolute beginners. So I've got single crochet, double crochet, triple crochet, a couple of variations on each of those, and I also have the basket weave crochet stitch and the waffle crochet stitch. So if you are just learning, just starting out, maybe a good idea to check those ones out first. If you're just looking for this stitch, then definitely stay right here. So you can see I'm building up a little bit now. I've got most of my next row on my hook. I'm just going to finish putting this row onto the hook. And then we will not turn the corner, but we'll come back down the other way. Another great thing about this stitch is you're always working on the right side. You're never working like front to back. You're always only working on the one side of the, it's not fabric yet, but project, I guess, the one side of your project. All right, so now we're coming up on the home stretch. This is where things get a little bit, this is the only part you have to remember something. So now that we're at the end, that was our last vertical loop, but there's still this end piece. So insert your hook into that final chain, but this time you want to put 2 loops of yarn over your hook, wrap around and pull through, and that just makes the edge of your work nice and thick. If you only did the 1 loop, it would work just fine. It's just a little thicker if you do it over 2 loops. So let me do that again just to make it really clear. Because you did that 1 chain stitch. So you're inserting, oops, let me get you a little clearer here. So you're going to insert your hook into that final stitch, which is your chain, and you want 2 loops over your hook. Then you wrap around and pull through, and then since we're at the end, we're going to wrap around and pull through 1 more time because we are doing a chain stitch to elevate the next row. And now we're going to do the same thing as before, just wrap around, pull through 2 loops, wrap around, pull through 2 loops, all the way across until you have only 1 loop left on your, on your hook. So you can pause again, you can pause again if you'd like, and meet me back when you are finished with that row, and then we'll go back up the next row. Okay, so we're at the end of the row, final wrap around and pull through 2. Got 1 loop left on our hook, and you can see it's built up 1 more row. So now we're going to insert again only into these vertical stitches. So you see all these vertical lines here. We're going to be inserting into those lines 1 at a time, wrapping around and pulling through. And then insert into the next one, wrap around, pull through, insert into the next one, wrap around, pull through. All the way across your project until all of the vertical loop guys are on your hook. Wrap around, pull through, wrap around, pull through, all the way across. So I'm going to finish this row, and when I get up to the end, I will slow us back down to do a row change again. All right, so we're coming up on the end again. We've got the last vertical stitch right there, wrapping around and pulling through, and now we're at the end again. So what I'm going to do is just push it through that stitch. We want 2 pieces of yarn, 2 loops of yarn, I should say, on top of your hook. Then you wrap around, pull through, and then you do 1 chain stitch there just to bring up the height of that next row. And now we do the same thing we've been doing the whole time, wrapping around, pulling through 2 all the way across your project. Easy peasy. So it's like 1 really big, long, weird stitch per row as opposed to making 30 stitches. All right, wrap around, pull through 2 all the way across, and then you just keep working it that way. So I'm going to just keep working this project until I get a few more rows. I'm not really making anything, just a sampler for this. Oops. You know what? I will tell you right now what one downside is. One downside, if you lose loops on your hook, it's a little bit more complicated to get them back on if you're not paying really close attention. So if you lose a loop, don't freak out, but slow down. There we go, wrap around, pull through 2. Yep, so I'm just going to work a couple more rows exactly the same way, and when I come back I will show you how cool it starts to look, and I will talk you through the final row when you're finishing with this stitch. So pause the video and come back when you're almost ready to finish up your project, and I will show you how. Okay, so I've made it as far as I want to make it. I've done 10 rows and I'm on the final row now. So I'm going to show you how to finish something that you've done in the Tunisian stitch. So you'll see when you get to your final row that that top row is super gappy and loose, and that's because you just pulled your hook through it. But the only way to finish that off would be to crochet into these front vertical loops, just like you've been doing the whole time. That's what's keeping this whole part nice and tight and even. Oh, I love how beautiful this stitch is. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to finish off your project. Just like with all of the other rows, you're going to insert into that vertical front stitch, but this time you're going to do a slip stitch. So instead of wrapping around any other time, you just pull through both. Insert into that front loop, wrap around, pull through, and then also pull through the loop that's on your hook. Wrap around, oops, that's not right. Insert into that front vertical stitch, wrap around, pull through the loop on your hook. Insert, wrap around, pull through, wrap around, pull through, and you just do this all the way across your project, and it basically closes up that gap, tightens up your stitch, and makes the end of your project look the same as the beginning of your project, which is great. Symmetrical and beautiful. Insert, wrap around, pull through, insert, wrap around, pull through. So you can see at the end, now there's like this nice tight stitch, just like at the beginning from your foundation chain. So it's almost like mimicking your foundation chain so that both sides have that nice thick edge. This is such a beautiful stitch. I want to make a blanket now. I have so much yarn. I could make a blanket. I might make a blanket. Okay, anyway, for now I'm just doing this sampler. We will see what I do with this stitch later. I will update on my Instagram with a picture of the blanket that I might make. Alright, so coming up to our last couple of stitches there. Perfect. One more main post working with there, and then just like when we were turning the row, we're going to put it into that chain stitch we made, trying to get 2 loops on the hook to make it nice and strong on the edges. Insert, wrap around, pull through, and then take your scissors, cut, wrap around one more time, and pull through all of that. And then you're left with this super cute little, well, this is a sampler, but hopefully for you it'll be something a little bit bigger, like a blanket or a hat or maybe a part of a sweater or something. Oh, I love it. It's so dense. That's beautiful. That's like, it's a really pretty stitch. So this is the back side. Like I showed at the beginning, this one has lots of little bumps and loops on it. And this is the front side. So the front side has all vertical lines, the back side has all horizontal lines. Both sides are cute, but for me, it's definitely the front side that really gets me. I think it's just really a pretty stitch, and it really could work for a lot of things. This would be great for something to cover your like Swiffer with, because it's got those little ridges on it. It'd be great for a little scrubby. It's super cute though, and really nice dense stitch. That looks like an expensive dishcloth, you know? So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please come back every Tuesday and Thursday because I do put out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. Right now they are super crochet oriented because I am currently obsessed with crochet. But I do put out other tutorials as well. I do embroidery and sewing and all kinds of stuff. So if you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up, comment if you have something you'd like to see next, and subscribe because I do, like I said, put out new videos all the time. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!